Good day. Today we're going to be focusing on blocks, attributes, attribute extraction. And this particular video is going to focus on the basics of how to create a block, how to create an attribute inside a block, and then how to manage and extract that information into an Excel spreadsheet. So the first thing we have to do is start a drawing, and we'll get started. So we started a drawing. And this particular drawing that we're going to create is going to be very simple. The whole concept here is going to be a simple base concept. So we're going to create and draw using the Home tab just our object. And so we're going to create a basic shape here. Could be a leaning house. Could be a lot of different things. But we're just going to create a really basic shape. This particular shape we're going to create into a block. So the first step is how to create an object into a block or a W block. So a block is used only within the current drawing. So I can't, if I create this object as a block, I can only use it in this drawing elsewhere. If I create this as a W block, this creates a separate drawing file. That drawing file can be used in any drawing. So it's to your benefit to create objects as W blocks so you can use it in multiple drawing environments. And so a W block, which is known as a right block, can be found under the Insert tab. So the Insert tab up at the top provides us all the information in the area that we're going to be focusing on primarily today. So to begin, we're going to show you how to create a W block without an attribute. Then we're going to create another block with an attribute. And then we're going to show you how to bring these blocks into a brand new drawing. Not into the drawing that it was created in, but into a brand new different drawing. That's an important key. So the first thing to do is under the Create block, we've got two options. And we talked about the standard block and the W block, what is known as the right block. So we're going to go ahead and create a right block. So the right block is going to create a block, a separate drawing file, and it's going to be based on, if we choose the entire drawing, then the base point becomes 0, 0, 0, which is typically in your lower left-hand corner. We can select the point on the object as a base point, which is a preferred method of managing the block itself. So that way you've got control of the object when you're bringing it into the space. If not, it will always be based in the 0, 0, 0 orientation. And that's a default when you pick entire drawing. There's no option. So when we select objects, we're going to pick just the objects that we need. We can either A, retain the objects in the block, or delete them from the drawing, or we can convert them to a standard block in the current drawing. So we're just going to choose Retain the Block, and we're going to pick the Select Objects button and window around the objects. Again, we're using a standard selection window as opposed to the crossing one, which is green. So now we've selected our 5 objects, and when we're done selecting objects, we always right mouse click or hit the Enter key on the keyboard to bring it back to the dialog box. The last thing we have to determine is where is this going to be created and what is the name of the block. So I've created a subdirectory called temp, and we're going to create this as house 1. Now what's important about this is the insertion units. You want to select the units of measurement, the smallest unit of measurement that is going to be used with the object. Now a lot of companies select unit lists, and that's kind of like faking it. Because if you pick unit lists, then the drawing can come in at any drawing scale. You have no idea what the relationship is of the object that you're bringing in as a block and your current drawing if it's unitless. If you choose millimeters and bring it into an inch drawing, it will scale it appropriately for the inch drawing. Vice versa, if you have an inch drawing and bringing it into a metric drawing environment, it will again scale the shape of the object for that to occur. So I always recommend selecting the insertion units. So the block becomes semi-intelligent in terms of knowing what drawing environment it was created in. When I choose OK, the object is going to be retained, which means nothing is going to happen. If I choose delete from drawing, it will automatically disappear when I choose the OK button. So you might have saw a flash up in the upper left-hand corner. It took a snapshot of the image. So when I bring the block back in, it will give me an image of what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this object. So I'm going to go back to home and we're going to create another block. This time this house number 2, is going to look a little bit different. So house number 2 has a different look and feel, but this time with this particular object, we're going to create what are known as attributes. And so attributes allow us to create informational tags that are stored with the block. So as you go shopping, and this is the best analogy I can provide, when you go shopping, and many items, especially clothing, have tags on them, and they also have the UPC. And if you've got a smartphone, you can scan the UPC and get pricing information from other vendors online and so forth. So that UPC is a smart, knowledge-based piece of information. Well, the same thing is done with an attribute. So we can create attributes about this house. And if we were drawing this house, we might want to know the builder, how much it's going to cost, the square footage. Those are all attributes that we can store inside the block itself. So the question is, why do I want to do this? Well, if I'm doing a building and I'm using 500 windows in this building, I can put the attribute of the window cost or the manufacturer or the size, anything that I need to save about that window with that block. So they then can extract that information and do a cost analysis or other components associated with that set of blocks that I've used in the drawing environment. So it's kind of like a mini database. That's the concept of attributes, is developing a mini database of information for your drawing. So when we choose edit block, or in this case, we need to create or define an attribute and not edit it. So we're going to go ahead and define the attribute first. So the attribute tag is the name of the attribute. This is stored as the database name. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the first database name as cost. The prompt is always in the form of a question, kind of like Jeopardy. So what is the cost? And the default is the default value of the cost of, in this case, the house. And we're going to say $100,000. Now, if I put the dollar sign in, then all of my cost components must have a dollar sign. If I leave the dollar sign out, all the objects can be left without the dollar sign. The text settings are just that. This is just like standard text information that's going to be placed on your drawing, so you can change how it's going to be justified, the style. Is it going to be scaled automatically for layouts, which is annotative text, the default text height, any rotations. The insertion point is going to be on the screen, so it's going to automatically locate it. And we've got other options here in the upper left-hand corner. If we want all this attribute information to be invisible, meaning you don't see it at all, it's turned off, we can set it up to be that way. The question I have about constant, if the attribute is a constant, meaning that it can never be changed, that's it, like 3.1415 for pi, that's pretty rare to have a constant based attribute, but it is an option. Do we want to verify it? A lot of times I like to verify the attribute information, so it'll ask me the question a second time just to double check that the information is correct. If there's a preset value, which is kind of like the default value, we can set that. And if we want to use multiple lines for our attribute, meaning that it's more of a paragraph style, as opposed to a single line entry. So we can control that also. We'll choose OK, and we'll go ahead and put the attribute. Now I recommend putting attributes inside the object. I know you can put them anywhere on the drawing, there's no limitation, but when you insert the object, having the attributes with that insertion makes it a little bit easier for you to manage and edit if you choose to. So we're going to define one more attribute. In this case, we're going to put in square footage. So we're just going to put SQFT. And so it's going to be known as square foot. What is the square footage? If I could spell properly. There we go. And the default is 1,500 square feet. Now you'll notice that the same prompts are automatically set. It'll specify it on screen. But I also have a new option here that I can choose as a line below the previous attribute, which means that if I choose OK or choose this check mark, it'll automatically put it below the cost attribute in a series. Again, makes it easier if you're inputting multiple attributes with a block as you create it. So now I've got two attributes with this block itself. Now I've got to create the block. So you've drawn the object, you've added the attributes, and again, attributes have to be added before the block creation. It's more difficult if you have to edit the block to put the attributes in. We're going to go ahead and create a new right block. So we'll choose the right block option. And we're going to select our objects. We'll pick those objects. You'll notice that I'm going to select both the outside shape and the attributes as the objects for the block. We're going to go ahead and put it under the temp, and we're going to call this House 2. So House 2 will have the block information. Perfect. So again, it retained it, and we're good to go. Now, if I try to bring a block in with attributes back into a drawing that I've created it in, it fails. Let me show you. This is what not to do. Again, what not to do. So if I try to reinsert, so reinserting, I'm going to choose the browse option, go to temp, and I'm going to pick house number 2. That was the one with the attributes. We'll choose open, and you'll notice that there's very little imagery that showed up on that. We'll choose open, and it'll allow me to specify the location point. It's going to be a full-size scale, no rotation. The block units are in inches, and it's a scale factor of 1. We'll choose OK, and it's going to bring it in. This is a new and updated change that it did actually go in and provide the opportunity to edit the attributes. We'll choose OK, and now the attributes are being displayed in the current drawing. Typically in the past, this wouldn't work, and so they have updated and repaired this. It's always good, though, when we're creating a block in an attribute drawing, just as a rule of thumb, create the blocks in one drawing, go ahead and close it. No, we don't want to save any changes, and just start a brand new drawing. So we're going to go ahead and create a little subdivision here of houses. And so we're going to draw our street. And on the street, we're going to put some houses. So we're going to go to Insert. We're going to go ahead and Insert and Browse. And we've got House 1 and House 2. So we're going to go ahead and put in House 1. When we insert house number 1, and again, same insertion screen, so it's going to allow me to specify the insertion point on the screen. It'll scale it and rotate it. So house number 1, we're going to go ahead and place right there. We're going to do another insertion. And notice that house 1, since it's been inserted, I can choose that automatically, or I can go ahead and choose more options, browse, and select house number 2, which in this case is going to be set next door. This again pops up and asks me what the attribute information is. This is the verify option. Not having the verify option checked, you won't get this dialog box to appear. So now it has some attributes. Now what happens if I copy the block? And here's the deal. A block is a basically taking a series of individual objects and then collectively grouping them together. Yes, there is a group command in AutoCAD, but blocks allow you to group this as one single entity as opposed to just grouping the objects together. This is known as one single entity. So if I copy this, and we'll go ahead and copy, notice that I'm selecting part of the original house, but it won't get selected because you have to select the whole thing because it's one object. So I'm going to right mouse click, and we're just going to go ahead and make a couple of these copies here. A lot of houses. So I can copy a block, and it's still kept as a block itself, which makes it advantageous. So now can I edit attributes once they're created? Absolutely. So back to the Insert tab, we have the ability to manage or edit attributes. And so if I edit the attribute, I can select the block and it pops up and it tells me, well, there's two attributes that are associated with this. Do we want to change either one? Well, I can change this attribute to make that one 2,000 square feet, and then I can change that same attribute and then increase the cost of $125,000. And so I can go in and individually edit each attribute. I could also edit the attributes as a multiple, which means I can select all the objects. Do I want to select edit them one at a time? Yes. Enter block name or specification. So we're going to select all the blocks. Enter attribute tag, all of them. Enter attribute value, all of them. Select the attributes. Just going to window around these. Right mouse click. And so now it allows me to individually edit the position and information about each of the attributes. And you can see that I can go through and individually change each one of these in terms of characteristics. So again, the ability to edit attributes is in there. Managing attributes, slightly different. These are the two attributes that are found in the block itself, and I can sync or select the block to manage those in that operation. So again, I can move these up or down, I can reset them, there's settings options, control the rotation, width factor, and so forth. So again, I can manage the attributes, and we only have one block that has attributes in there. The last thing that I wanted to mention, so now that we've created the right block, we've added attributes to that right block, we've brought the block back in so it's got attributes. The last thing I wanted to talk about is attribute extraction, which is the extract data option. So once you put attributes in there, the reason why we do that is so we can create a database. Well, the extract data allows us to extract it. We're going to choose extract data, and it says that I have to save the drawing. So let's go ahead and save the drawing as house multiple.twg. And it's going to ask us to create a brand new data extraction. And it's going to ask us to have a name. So we're going to call this house multiple. And the drawing or the sheet, or select the objects in the drawing. I'm going to go ahead and select the objects in the current drawing. And extract objects from blocks, extract objects from Xrefs, and we'll talk about what an Xref is here in just a second. All objects in model space, extract from all objects in model space, and choose OK. And I should select the objects in the current drawing. So I'll go ahead and window around everything, hit the Enter key, and notice that the Next button now came up. previously, if I didn't select the objects, that next button would not allow me to move forward. So I move forward and it has all my attributes. It tells me house 1 and house 2 are a block, that there's a line that's a non-block up there. And it's going to go through and look at all the data extraction that we have. We'll choose next. And now it looks at all the different information that has been extracted, including the cost attribute. And there should be one other attribute in here on the list. Let me see if I can find that. Cost and then square foot. So it should be under S. Square foot. Well, we can either select or not select this as data attribution. So maybe if I want to just get the attributes, I could uncheck all these. I don't need the geometry or the general or the text information. It just depends on what I want to extract to my data file. I can control that. And so if all you want to do is extract the attribute, then select just the attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and select the attribute drawing and text. There is no text, so I might take out and select geometry. Well, we're going to take geometry out. We'll just do attribute, drawing, and text. We'll hit next. And it's now created a data file for us. And it tells us what the different attribute information is and that there's 6 different attributes. There's 5 houses, house 2s, there's 1 house 1, and we'll go ahead and we can do a full preview. We can link to external data sites if we need to link to external data sites, and we'll choose next. And insert data extraction into a drawing or output the data to an external file. So I'm going to go ahead and output it to the d:" temp / housemultiple.xls. Now an XLS is an Excel spreadsheet. So once we export it, we can save this as an XLS or CSV, either way. Both will work with Excel spreadsheets. MDB is a database file and TXT is a standard text file. And I choose Finish. So with the magic of computers, I'm going to go ahead and pause this for a second, bring up my Excel, and we'll show you how to open up that Excel spreadsheet. Okay, you can see here in my Excel spreadsheet, I'm going to go ahead and open from that temp subdirectory the house multiple. We'll choose open. And there's the information, the extracted data. So I can utilize the values information that it's been extracted and the quantity count to give me information about that drawing itself. So that's the concept of extracting data information and making it a database. Lastly, we're going to talk about external references. Now, external references are another tool that you want to create in one drawing and then bring that information into a separate drawing. Now, this external reference is a link back to the original drawing. So it brings in an image, in this case of house or house 2, and then if we were to subsequently bring in the block, it would have to update that to have all the data. So let me give you an example. We're going to go ahead and create a brand new drawing. With the new drawing, I don't have any blocks in this drawing, so I'm going to go ahead and attach, which is the tool that we use for Xrefs. You'll also notice that we have a block editor. So I could have used the block editor if we wanted to add windows or doors into the house after the fact. But the attach tool is how we bring in an external reference. Now I can also attach drawings. I can also attach images like JPEG files into a drawing. So it's really easy to take a image file, place it on a drawing environment, move to a new layer, and then draw on top of that JPEG file and basically sketch out that image. So you can utilize the attach tool to accomplish that. So we're going to go ahead and choose attach, and we're going to go to temp, and it says, well, it can't find any image files. Well, we're not looking for an image file. What we actually want to do is attach a drawing file. So attaching a drawing file is the Xref. So Xref stands for external reference. That brings in a object shape image. The data about house number 2, when we bring it in, is still stored in the original drawing. It just brings in a picture. So it makes the drawing size significantly smaller than one when we use blocks. When we use blocks, it brings all the data, all the line geometry information with it. If it had dimensions, the same thing would occur. That's all as part of that house 2. We're going to go ahead and choose open, and it's going to ask to attach an external reference. Again, Xref. We can specify the scale, and we've seen these before when we did blocks. The only difference is that there's an attachment and an overlay. So an attachment is if you have a brand new attachment, that there's no existing block or other information in the drawing. If there's a block or the object's been attached prior, you'd want to use an overlay. So the best way to explain this is, let's say, for example, I'm doing a subdivision and I put in 5 fire hydrants. Well, when I put in the original 5 fire hydrants, I put them in as blocks. Later on, the city said, all right, I need to add an additional fire hydrant in this location. Well, I brought that in as an external reference to help save file size. The difference being, when I bring it in, I'd have to bring it in as an overlay, not as an attachment. Put it this way, if you get an error when you try to attach, just go back and use the overlay, and it will attach using the overlay tool. We'll choose OK, and you'll bring in the house itself. And it's asking us about XY information and the scaling and so forth at this point. You'll notice that information is brought in. So it's there. Let me hit the escape key here. You'll also notice that it's slightly gray. It's not as bright as a line. So if I draw a line under this, you'll notice the difference. This is a gray image. This is a bright white image. So this is an entity or a block. This is an Xref. An Xref is typically a lighter gray. You'll also notice that when I double click on it, it says that it's a reference edit. It doesn't have geometry. Now, can I take an Xref and turn it into a block? Yes, I can bind the information. You'll also find several of the block information items under the pull down or under the home ribbon also, but I find it easier to work under the block itself, under the insert tab, sorry. So we were using the attach tool, and the way that we could set this up is there's a command called bind, B-I-N-D, and if we bind an Xref, it turns it into a W block, or excuse me, it turns it into a localized block. It binds the data information. So that's the way that we can take and create an Xref initially, and then if we have to go back and edit the roof or edit an object within the drawing, I can bind it, make the edits within the drawing, and then save a new drawing file. So that's the difference between blocks and Xrefs. They have to be bound in case we utilize editing purposes, and we'll go from there. That pretty much wraps up the basics of creating a block, an attribute, and an Xref. I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.